Good morning and welcome back to Mindful Mischief, episode 5. I'm Lisa Feitz, school psychologist here at Union North, and I'm super excited to be your host for this episode, even though I just told the whole table that I actually prefer to be a co-host than a host because it's more fun that way. But
Less work.
Just a reminder to our viewers and listeners, our goal for our podcast is to share information with you guys that's easy to understand, it's accessible so you can listen in your car, whether you're cooking dinner, any of that stuff, and that we're fun to listen to. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I think we're succeeding. I think we are meeting those goals and maybe surpassing them.
Yeah. Hold on.
Because we have no shame, Dr. Martinez, give us updated numbers on viewers and listeners.
218 views episode 1 and 76 views episode 2. I mean, 300 people can't be wrong.
No. And I'm pretty sure I like all of them. We have covered a lot of ground in our first 4 episodes, and thank you to you guys who have tuned in to episode 1 and 2. Today's a special day because this is a halfway mark. We've released our second episode, and if you're watching, you'll see that we all have headphones on. So we have leveled up and become a legit podcast here with technology. So we've also covered an intro to conscious discipline, brain states, the school family, along with the power of perception and the skill of composure. But at the beginning of each episode, we've taken a couple minutes to get to know us a little bit better. I know most people know us in our professional capacity, but we've kind of shared some stuff about us. But I have a question for you guys, and I told you I was going to ask this question on Monday. If you were not doing this current job, so if you were not a school counselor or you were not a principal at an elementary school, what would you be doing? Sky's the limit, no holds barred. Kari, what would you be doing?
So, I would be a therapist, so I already have that. But I would love to be doing something a little higher up in psychology or psychiatry. I think psychiatry is really interesting. So,
Be a psychiatrist, doctor.
I would love to be Dr. Havermehl.
Dr. Havermehl.
Doctor.
Dr. Martinez, what'd you be doing?
I don't know. Maybe I do appreciate mowing my lawn. So maybe a lawn care company, landscaping. It'd be kind of enjoyable, working with your hands.
Yeah.
Home crafts. I like to build stuff. So
yeah. You get that farmer's
like
tan with that lawn care work.
Well, no, I'd go sleeveless. No tank top, but just no sleeves.
Yes, you would. Awesome. Joke's on you guys, because I would be recording a parenting podcast, but I'd be saying a whole lot more curse words, and I'd probably be enjoying a glass of wine while I did it.
Lots of sponsorship opportunities there.
I feel like the people want the real me, and you're not really getting that here a whole lot.
A stifled version.
Definitely. I'm actually just kidding. I would be teaching special education. I probably would still be in the classroom if the opportunity for school psychology hadn't popped up. I loved teaching special education, and I kind of saw myself there long term. So glad this path came. But now I'm really excited to introduce our special guests today, because both of these people are really special to me. It didn't take a whole lot of convincing for my co-host to let these two people come on, but not only am I lucky enough to work alongside you guys, but I'm also lucky enough that they are two of my very best friends. So joining us today is our speech and language pathologist, Blair Endicott, and 6th grade teacher, Katie Strang. Welcome. They kind of double for us as staff members, but also as parents. And as I was working on this last night, this is the first episode that we've had 5 staff members, all in different positions. Mm-hmm. So we had Amber and Zach on last episode, but Amber and Kari are both counselors. So naturally the conversation leaned, I thought, a little bit more towards counseling than it would in other conversations. But so thank you both for agreeing to come today. Again, it didn't take them too much convincing to come on here, probably because they're both super supportive, and they're like, whatever you need, Lisa, I'll do that. Even though I know this may be slightly out of Blair's comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So let's start by sharing a little bit about yourself. Katie, we'll start with you. Give us a 1-minute elevator introduction, who you are, your family, background, connection to LaVille. And then I want you to tell us that if money was no object, what is the first thing you would buy? Go ahead.
Okay, I can't think of okay, I actually can. Okay, anyway, Katie Strang. I am a 6th grade English language arts teacher at LaVille. I have 3 children who all attend LaVille, a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and an 8-year-old. I am from this community. My husband and I both went to LaVille. My family founded Lakeville.
She's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a big local celebrity here. I don't know how many generations I can go out from, LaVille to Lakeville, but born and raised in this community, love this community. The ties run deep.
Mm-hmm. What would you buy?
I mean, does it have to be like a material item? Can I just say that I would just be traveling?
Yeah, I feel like that's fair.
That's where my money would go, traveling.
100%. Okay.
All right. I'm Blair Endicott. I'm a speech language pathologist. I did not grow up in Lakeville. But did grow up in northern Indiana here. So I came to LaVille when my brother-in-law was an assistant principal here. And funny enough, I was thinking about it last night. It was like a Mother's Day weekend, and he had said something like, I asked my superintendent, they were searching for a speech pathologist, and he said, you know one in real life? Can you give...
They're unicorns.
Yeah.
They do exist.
Can you give me her number? And I was like, oh, I guess so. And then your podcast guest that I watched the episode yesterday, Mr. Kenny Shirley, pretty much just didn't stop calling me. So I ended up here at LaVille and haven't looked back. So I have 3 children who all now attend LaVille. So I have a 13-year-old. It's my daughter's 11th birthday today.
Happy birthday, Bryn.
Happy birthday.
And then an 8-year-old. So his birthday's a week from now, so almost 9. And then my husband Tim and I, so we moved to Lakeville. We are all in on the community, and we're excited to be here.
Yeah. What would you buy?
Oh, absolutely. I would take I was thinking about this too. Probably do a big trip with all my family and friends. I was thinking like a big yacht.
Yeah, her friends.
Yeah. Everyone's invited. Maybe like a coast of Italy sort of thing. Like, yeah.
A European cruise.
Yeah.
On
like
a private
big yacht. Yeah.
We should
Definitely.
do that anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Check.
I'm all in.
Okay, what would you guys buy if money was no object?
So we talked about this for a
We did.
second yesterday, and my first instinct was a possum sanctuary.
No.
No. Oh,
Or a
Kari,
zoo.
you've opened the door
heads
for
are
the
shaking.
conversation
The heads are
later.
shaking.
Yes.
You've laid the groundwork.
We've been over
I
this,
was
Kari.
frivolous.
Frivolous.
Okay, it is.
Yes.
And does not, I'm not going to say it. I was going to say doesn't add value in any way, but
No, it
possums
does.
have value.
They do.
Okay, Dr. Martinez moving right along.
I'm just thinking last week it was watermelon, right? And then this week it's possum.
Yeah, yeah.
They like to pick on me here, that sometimes I have different answers. It's fine.
No.
It's a sign of affection and loyalty, right?
Yeah, exactly. What would you buy?
So I thought about this too, and I thought I would buy my house because if I didn't have to make the mortgage payment, I could do all the other fun stuff too.
That's smart.
Right? So.
That's smart.
We clearly went from different directions here.
Big.
Yeah.
Lisa, what would you buy?
I would just like pay cash for like a new vehicle. Not that my vehicle is like garbage, but it's given me some hard time
But if
lately. and
money was
I'm just
no-
tired. Yeah, like I would buy like a Wagoneer. Or like a Mercedes G-Wagon, something absolutely frivolous that I don't need, but would just like be all right to have. I don't know.
Just all right.
Just all right. Okay, so let's
Wish
move
we knew
on.
what Scotty would buy.
Oh,
Yeah, Scotty.
what would you buy? He's hesitating.
He is.
Probably a new house
Yeah.
Not
in a very far off country.
A vacation home
No,
or a
like,
place for you to be permanently.
Like, we're talking money's no object, right?
correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah, far off country and a huge mansion.
Can they
Would you
hear-
fly in every week to do our podcast then?
Yes.
Somewhere
Okay.
with universal health care? I don't know.
Hey, that's a good suggestion.
He's getting out of here.
Okay, so moving right along, like I said, we're on episode 5 of 10, so we're halfway. today. Each one have focused on different chapters from Conscious Discipline, Building Resilient Classrooms by Dr. Becky. In each episode, we've had different guests and different conversations. So last time in episode 4, Dr. Martinez talked to us about the power of perception and the skill of composure. Will you give us just a short recap?
Yeah, so last week, the power of perception, the skill of composure, we shared some key points for families, and so I'll just repeat those here to kick us off. 1, the skill of composure leads us to become the person we want others to become. The power of perception reaffirms that no one can make me angry without my permission. Again, choosing happy. Number 3, as the parent and the adult, our goal should be to be the person we want others to become and remain calm enough to teach children by example. Number 4, as a child, the goal should be to develop the ability to actively calm and regulate our emotions. Remember, no one can make you angry without your permission. Reclaim your power by actively calming yourself in times of distress. Effective discipline requires us to model the behavior we want our children to possess. Back to you, Lisa.
Yeah, right on. So chapter 5 is the skill of assertiveness with the power of attention. And assertiveness, coincidentally, is probably the skill I relate to most in this book. It's no secret that I've been described assertive a time or two in my life, and I'm not really sure if that stemmed from like my professional journey or like I'm also the youngest of 5 girls, so I had to be assertive from like day one to get anything that I wanted to happen at home, or like if it was just my parents and their parenting like allowing me the space to like develop into this. Either way, I'm grateful. I'm thankful for that, but I also feel like I said this last time and I said it earlier. This chapter is like so massive. I'm going to do my best to consolidate this into like important takeaways, but I recognize I'm going to completely skip over some things that people may think they're important. So I'm going to rely on you guys around me. If there are pieces that you're like, hey, let me connect to that, or I found that particularly valuable, feel free to stop me because I don't want to be the only one kind of talking this whole time. So Dr. Becky says that assertiveness is clear, vigilant communication that focuses children's attention on what we want them to do. So that communication isn't what we don't want them to do, it's what we do want them to do. And it's essential for setting effective and respectful limits. That piece right there, when it comes to assertiveness, I feel like is maybe possibly the biggest takeaway in the chapter is we have to be assertive to set effective and respectful limits to those around us. So who here, by a show of hands, has had difficulty setting effective or respectful boundaries to people around them?
Oh,
I do.
No? Not Katie.
No problems here.
Katie will tell you no. I do at times, but it's important. And it's important because assertiveness within our school family creates safety and predictability and consistency. So when students can predict how we're going to respond, when every adult is consistent, our school family and our building becomes safer. Does anybody have any thoughts or experiences that kind of support that, the need for assertiveness for safety, predictability, and consistency? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, sure. I would say, when you talk about boundaries, I always feel that the boundaries are when something is hurting someone else. For me, like that's always been a hard boundary of, you can do something. I'm going to allow, behavior to a certain extent. But as soon as that crosses that boundary of it's unkind to someone else or it's hurting someone else, that's where that boundary comes for me.
Mm-hmm. Like you can ignore certain things.
Yes.
And I feel like as an educator and also as a parent, like we have to.
Yes.
We genuinely have to ignore certain things because if we didn't, then we're just going to constantly be redirecting all day long.
Well, I think the other part of assertiveness, too, is it provides clarity, right? There's no ambiguity to what you're expecting or what's okay. And I think that's important, too, because then there's no misunderstandings or, oh, I thought you meant this. So when you're assertive and you're clear, that leaves little room for question. Right?
Clear with what we want, not what we don't want. Sorry. They paired the skill of assertiveness with the power of attention. Essentially, what we pay attention to, we get more of. An example of this would be if I'm focusing on how needy and whiny my 3-year-old has been lately, and it's been a lot, the only thing I'm going to continue to notice is her neediness, then leading to frustration on my end of like, why can't she do these things? Why are we having such a hard time? If instead I focus on all the things she's doing independently, I will inevitably continue to notice her growing independence and celebrate that. So one easy pivot allows me to use my innate neuroplasticity and change my whole vantage point in a more positive way. So I'm focusing on the good things that she's doing instead of the bad things, and then that kind of allows more good and positivity into my vantage and my viewpoint, and it changes the whole energy of the situation. So, like I mentioned earlier, naturally leaning into assertiveness isn't comfortable or natural for a lot of people. But on top of that, when we're upset or we're in an emotional or survival state, we focus on what we don't want instead of what we do. So this is natural because if our brain is sensing danger and we're defensive, we're in that survival state or emotional state, the energy goes to stopping the threat, right? The energy is like, something is wrong, I need to focus on this, and that is like also a physiological response of like, the blood stops going to your extremities, your adrenaline starts pumping, so there's lots of things that happen innately, but the energy goes to the threat, not solving the problem. So in order for us to focus on what we do want, we have to regulate ourselves back to the executive state. And we need to be modeling that, because kids, if we have a hard enough time with that, imagine what our students are struggling with managing that as well. So here's an example of that in action. If our students are fighting at recess, and that happens, like I'm talking like a physical fight, our natural response as adults is to say, stop hitting each other, right? Stop hitting each other, stop putting your hands on each other, all of those things. Instead, it takes a conscious effort to shift and to pivot and operationally define what the desired behavior is. So instead of saying, stop doing this, focusing on what I don't want, I'm gonna say, I want my students to learn to communicate effectively when they're frustrated in socially acceptable ways, right? You're mad that he got you out in dodgeball and then you took a swing at him. Instead, I want you to be able to say, I'm mad, I need a break, right? That would be acceptable. So we first got to discipline ourselves to make that shift and pivot so that we can model to our students to make the shift and pivot. Does anybody have any thoughts or connections so far on that? Like shifting from what we don't want to what we do want.
Well, how often do we tell at least our toddlers, like, hey, don't do that, and they do the opposite thing? I think a lot of times they hear whatever that thing is and they don't hear the whole sentence and just go for it. And so honestly, it's not telling them how you want something done, it's just stop doing whatever it is and they don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah, I do that a lot of stops. I think there's a paragraph in this chapter actually that Dr. Becky talks about that of like, if you're like, don't touch the lamp, all they hear is touch the lamp. Like they hear the actual physical piece of it and not the don't. So if instead you reframe that to like, oh, I see you see the lamp, you think it's pretty, let me show you how to touch it gently and be delicate with the glass, then you're showing them what you do want instead of what you don't. Toddlers are just absolute savages. So I said in the last episode too, like, to be clear, I'm not modeling tantrums, okay? So if you see my kid tantruming somewhere or screaming and crying in the Target, I'm not doing that. That's her own free will.
I had to reread the paragraph where she said, if a dead person could do it, don't say it like that. Like, so if you say like, don't run, like, yeah, they might not be able to run, but if you say
can't run.
Walk, calmly.
Yeah,
I just thought that was funny. That stuck out to me when I reread the chapter, or read it the first time, if I'm being honest.
It's a lot.
I do think Dr. Becky has a sense of humor. It's just under
very
some
funny.
layers. I think this is also one of the longest episodes we watched, if I remember correctly. Yes. Week 5 was one of the longest PD's videos. So Assertiveness, getting back on track, teaches others how to treat us. So essentially, what we will allow will continue. And I think that's really powerful because in the essence of parenting and at school, what that means is that disrespect from children signals a lack of assertive adults in their life. Now, I'm sure that there are people listening and thinking like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I know a lot of disrespectful kids that do have assertive adults in their life and they're still disrespectful. And I would tend to agree. I think that probably still can happen. And they're probably right. But let me explain how that might happen, and it's directly related to ACEs and trauma, which is like a reoccurring theme for us in all of these episodes. We keep coming back to all the baggage these kids are bringing in and why these skills and why conscious discipline in general is important. So for example, say a child loses a parent or a caregiver to cancer. The remaining caregiver, whether it be like the other parent or a grandparent, then kind of naturally walks on eggshells around that child in order to not upset them or trigger the trauma that they've experienced. Okay, so like I'm not going to come down very hard on you with consequences or punishments. I'm not going to hold you accountable because they think to themselves like, this kid's had a hard enough life, right? They could use a break. Things are already going not their way. So the adult has positive intent and empathy towards this child, right? They clearly love them and care about them and want to make their life easier and want to help them. But what happens is that because the adults around them haven't been assertive and given clear boundaries, the child takes advantage, as any child would, right? Like this isn't specific to like boys or girls. Like kids, if they sense weakness, they're going to take advantage of it. And now I recognize that sounds really negative and kind of difficult to digest, but it's an all too common situation. And we see it so often that you could take the parent dying of cancer or any sort of disease and replace it with literally any ACE, and the rest of the story can remain the same, right? Mm-hmm. I'm the mom, my husband goes to jail for drugs, and now all of a sudden, like, I feel this responsibility to make up for that as a parent, so because my kids have been dealt a hard hand. So I'm not going to hold them accountable. I'm not going to keep my expectations high. But in reality, it boils down to those clear boundaries and high expectations are a form of love. And we've talked about this a lot. And it's one of the best gifts as adults that we can give the children in our care, including us as educators. And we talk about this a lot day to day in the hallway of like, our expectations are high no matter what your circumstances are. And what that does is it teaches our students that we're not making excuses and I'm going to show you how to treat me, right? Disrespect to me is never okay, no matter how bad your morning was. Do you want to, Katie, you do a great job of that in your classroom. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, excuse me. I'm big on boundaries. I'm very assertive, I guess, when it comes to expectations with kids. I hold them to a pretty high regard. Just last week, we sat down with our entire sixth grade. Sixth grade's very similar to a senior year, where you get to the end, and let's coast. Okay, mm-hmm. We're gonna coast on through the end. So we sat down with this as a sixth grade group, really setting clear expectations and boundaries for the end of the school year, modeling what that looks like for our kids. And then, I came in with, I really think that Claire's kind, right? Mm-hmm. Per Brene.
Our girl Brene.
So here's your very clear expectations. This is the standard that we are going to hold you to. And then letting them understand that is for me, the highest form of love, okay? Because the minute I kind of release those boundaries, that's really me saying, I have lost my interest in you. I don't believe that you can meet those expectations. And I don't love you. So for real, I really do love all my sixth grade kids, and I do hold them to a pretty high regard. But we always make it pretty clear. So when we're moving or transitioning, before we do that, we say, this is what we're doing. This is our expectation of you, and we expect you to do this because, so they know why we are doing what we're doing and the expectations that they are being held to.
And this is extremely effective. We were actually just talking about a student who, when that student goes to specials and the expectations are different, right? It's a different environment. It's less structured. The student is like demonstrating pretty significant behaviors and is having a really hard time. That student, when he returns to the gen ed classrooms, is not necessarily demonstrating those same behaviors. So at lunch, this is literally a lunch topic yesterday, we're like, how do we problem solve this, right? Because he's clearly capable of meeting the expectations and performing, right, in the setting. But when the expectations change or they've lowered in his eyes, and this is no dig at our specials teachers because they're phenomenal and do a great job, but in his eyes, the expectations are different. He is not. He has sensed some sort of shift in the consistency or the predictability from the adults. So that's just an example right there of how that can be really effective. And then really, speaking of boundaries, like social media and the impact, Dr. Becky spends kind of a lot of time in the chapter talking about social media and advertisements and how it's impacted our youth. For us in this room, social media was not an issue when we were younger, right? So it's not something we really had to worry about. But when we're talking about the power of attention, remember, what we pay attention to, we will get more of. Our children need to master this skill much earlier because of their access to social media. When I think about me as a 13-year-old girl, if I was on Instagram or TikTok and all I see are these beautiful, thin, perfect skin, perfect hair, girls that seem to have like the perfect style and endless funds all in front of me, I can't imagine how susceptible I would be to thinking that's exactly what my life is supposed to look like. So if we can teach them to tune in and tune out, right, and harness that power of attention, we can almost provide a protective factor for them against that social media. But because Kari brought up possums, I'm just going to lean in here because speaking of social media, I know we've all seen the Instagram reels or TikToks that are like, we listen and we don't judge. Well, turns out Dr. Becky says this has merit. It's got, I'm not going to tell the whole story. I'll let you do that if you want to. But we listen and we don't judge. So she said, when we notice instead of judging, it helps scaffold our children's attention by directing and sustaining their attention. Noticing is a powerful tool. It has immediate and profound impact on the classroom. It goes from like, you wrote your name to from you didn't write your name correctly or you need to write your name neater. Instead, I'm just saying you wrote your name, and they're noticing what they've done. That leads us into all of the praise we've talked about as well of like, you did it, and giving them ownership. But there was a time where Kari told me, Lisa, we listen and we don't judge. And then she told me a story, and I judged, and she could tell that
we all judged.
She could tell that I was
incredibly observant.
I was
weren't judgmental.
No. My face said
so judgy.
No, my face said something ain't right. Okay, and that's something ain't right. So, Kari, do you want to talk about the background of the possum sanctuary, or do you just want to move on?
I can tell it that way. We don't have questions. Let's
You
be
just
real.
want to affirm
I
your
just
love
want
for
to affirm
possums.
that I do. So I get a little nervous when I see somebody hit a possum, and there's a chance that there are babies in there that are still living. They are a marsupial, the only Native American marsupial. And so I have checked a time or two. I will pull over and just make sure that they're okay. Most of the time it's fine. But there are lots of people that save baby possums because they get hit. I'm feeling the judgment. I can like sense it.
We're just noticing.
No, you're not. I can sense it in the room.
so
In my heart, Matt Florian is judging
I am
me
making
so
such
hard.
a conscious effort to notice and not judge, and I've heard this story before.
I can't wait.
When she
next
gave a
week to
number
share.
to the times it had happened, she thought it was going to make it better for us that she was telling the story to. And I'm not sure that
I'm
was
just so
effective.
caring, okay?
Because then when she said it, I said, that is more than what I was imagining in my head, and now it's worse. So to just summarize that in a really delicate way, Kari is telling us that she checks dead possums' pouches for
I just make
babies.
sure that they're dead.
For
I'm
babies.
not touching them.
But how do you...
But what if they were alive?
I would put them in my car and take
So
them
I
somewhere.
posed the question, Scotty, that like, okay, like possums pretend to be dead. Like this is like a skill that they are known for. Hypothetically, you approach a dead a possum that's playing dead, mind you, and you check the pouch. What do you think is going to happen?
They're not going to move.
If you were putting your hand in my
I'm not
pouch
putting my hand.
to check and see if my babies were alive, I would be biting it off.
Scotty's got the mic. Hold on.
Okay,
She's
thank
gonna get
God you are
rabies.
not.
My wife would do the same thing.
Okay,
Yay
but that's a
for
whole nother
Scotty's
facet because we were like,
wife.
Kari, what does your husband do? What does Steven say? And she was like, when he sees a dead possum, he says,
He would pull over.
Kari, do we need to stop? And I was like,
He's
that's
just
love.
so kind.
That is.
That's
Steven
love.
loves me so well. Also, it is his birthday, so thank you for loving me.
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday,
Steven.
I am sorry that we are at this point.
Well,
in the podcast.
now you
I'm
can just
not.
think,
I'm not sorry.
would a dead possum be able to do that when you're giving directions instead of the, morbidity
But also, Kari,
of a dead person?
it brings me to the asking the possum, did you like it?
Like it.
Because
Probably not.
Would the possum like it?
If this is a dying possum and they wanted to make sure their babies were okay, I would be so thankful that someone is taking care of my babies.
take them.
And I would.
So with that,
I hope we
just
cut all of that
question. I feel like maybe we've answered this inadvertently, but like personally, how do you guys default? Do you default to judging or do you default to noticing? And then like, has that adjusted after learning about conscious discipline? I can like confidently say to myself that I default to judging, even if I'm not meaning to, and I'm really bad at hiding the look on my face, so you'll know immediately if I'm like, that's not okay. But I am making a conscious effort to notice more. Anybody else default to judging?
I think it probably in some way depends on what brain state I'm in, right? Like if I'm executive, I'm good, I'm smiling, I'm gonna notice. But if I'm feeling emotional or if I'm feeling fight or flighty, I might be judging. But I think of all the things we've learned this year, I think this is the area I find myself most consciously thinking about. Like I will find myself saying, stop running in the hallway and then immediately correct it, right? To try to rephrase it.
I would agree with you. This year, just going through conscious discipline training has, my brain still defaults to judgment, but it doesn't come out of my mouth, I guess, I would say.
Progress.
Progress, so that I can notice the good things that are going on. I think Blair and I, we were chatting this weekend, and just noticing that there are good things happening all around you, can change those brain pathways, right? Those neural pathways, noticing that there are really, and even in the midst of not so great things, there are great things happening around you. And when you take the time to notice it for a kid who has a hard time finding the good things that are happening, and maybe they're in an emotional state, right, is really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's going to just like be a journey for me. It's going to be a work in progress, and I'm just going to lean into that. I would say, though, Dr. Martinez, that you are exceptionally good at noticing and judging, and
good at
Noticing
judging.
and judging. He's great.
sorry, I meant not.
Ambidextrous.
I meant not judging. Like there are times when I've been super elevated in my emotional state. About 9 times out of 10, it's more like the adults I work with that kind of get me elevated than students. And I'll kind of come in his office and I'll shut the door and I'll be like, I need to get this off. And maybe you guys have had experiences with him with this as well, and he just sits there and he listens to me and he nods. And I'm thinking, like, get angry with me. Like, why are you not agreeing with me? But he's so good at listening first, pausing, digesting, and then being like, okay, Lisa, I think this is what we should do. And it doesn't take away from any of, like, the validation that I'm seeking. And typically, like, you'll say, like, yeah, you're right, that's not okay, and like, but like, how are we going to problem solve this? So I think that you are better at noticing than you give yourself credit for. And if there are only two of us in the room, I am the more dramatic one. So
It's been settled.
That's fair. So hang in with me. I've got like 2 more points that I just want to cover. Conscious discipline takes the stance that there are 3 voices we can use in our relationship and interactions. And I think this is important for us to just, again, notice where we're at and what kind of voice we're using. So based on the title of the chapter, we know which one is most effective when it comes to our school family and our relationships with setting boundaries. But the 3 are passivity, aggression, and assertiveness. So passivity invites aggression, aggression begets aggression, and assertiveness dissipates aggression. So when we're coming in with a passive tone, we're inviting others to be aggressive back to us. When we come in with an aggression tone, we're inviting others to also be aggressive. But when we come with assertiveness, it dissipates aggression, and I'd like to think that it kind of empowers those around us who are more passive to be more assertive. The goal of passivity is to just please each other. The goal of aggression is to win by overpowering, and the goal of assertiveness is clear communication. So again, I know where I land on all of that, but there are definitely places and circumstances where I could be all 3. And again, noticing and reflecting on that, like it for me, it depends on who's in the room. You might see me more passively, depending on what the situation is, who's in the room, if I don't feel comfortable. Or I can also lean on the opposite spectrum, and I could come across as aggression. And I've been told that I can be aggressive in meetings or whatever that is, but then recognizing that typically comes from a point of, like, I'm in my emotional state, and I'm not regulated, and I'm not ready to problem solve, like, I'm upset about something. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I know where I land. Where do you naturally lean? Passivity, aggression, or assertiveness?
I lean towards aggression, I would say. That's the other thing that as an adult I've worked on, and I think especially having kids, right? Mm-hmm. They match your energy. So if you're aggressive, they're going to be aggressive in return. So my brain naturally goes to an aggressive behavior. But it lands on assertiveness more often than not.
Mm-hmm. Nothing humbles you more than hearing your toddler discipline their baby dolls. And I'm like, who are you talking to like that? Oh, now I know where you got that from. Blair, where do you land?
Yeah, so I think naturally on that passivity, I've said before I'm a recovering people pleaser, but
also an Enneagram 9.
Yeah, so I will say though, in those moments, typically when I have been more aggressive, it's usually advocating on the behalf of someone else. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why that's an easier skill, but I do think and hope that I, land in that area of assertiveness most of the time, especially at work. Mm-hmm. I think it's really professionally easier to assert yourself at times than personally.
Mm-hmm.
Blair, I also fall on the passive, probably the most passive kind of in the room. I don't know. But I've actually learned a lot from you watching when we have de-escalated kids together. It's really nice to see that balance where you follow through in a really kind way. Not that you guys aren't kind, but just I've noticed a lot from you. And I'm working on being less passive. There is a water bottle.
I've learned, I worked with an amazing teacher. Her name was Ann Kamel, and she would just command a room. And so I think we all learn professionally. And we just, I would watch her command a room. She still does if you ever run into her around town. But you can learn from others, and I think I learn from everyone in this room. Like,
All the
I
time.
want to be more like that.
Yeah.
I would say probably either passive or assertive. I think in my role, it's not about winning a conversation or a situation, because I don't need to win. I just need us to get to the solution to a problem, whoever comes up with that idea, if that makes sense, right? So assertiveness, being clear on what we need to get accomplished, and then however we get there. But probably in my early days of administration, I was probably more aggressive than I am now. But I think that's just probably part of the journey of leadership and finding out who you are and figuring out your role within an organization or within your staff members. But I think as you grow, I think you probably grow out of that aggression
I
piece
saw
as a
you
leader.
at one point, your first year last year, I was like, he's always so cool, calm, and collected, and then there was a basketball game, and there was some issue, and I was doing the book, and you were doing the scoreboard, and you looked at the other coach from the other school, and you're like, it's our house, our rules, and just like, and I was like, oh, he.
Well, I think it was a B game
yes, it
situation,
was,
right? They were
was,
trying.
yeah.
They didn't want to play the full B game. It's like, no, the kids deserve to play. We're gonna let them play.
But I was like, oh, he like brought the hammer down.
So there is a place
Yeah.
for aggression.
There is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as we age, and like you said, kids have a way of humbling you, and experience has a way of humbling you. And I think the longer that you're in the profession and raising kids and maturing, that aggression or even passivity kind of balances itself out and puts you into a more assertive state.
Well, and I think aggression is good when it's on the behalf of either others or what's right for the situation.
Yep.
I think the problem with aggression is when it becomes about you as the individual.
Yeah.
And that's when I think it can be more negative.
Just curious, do you guys find yourself being or like responding differently outside of work? Like, I know I'm assertive at work, also can like lean into aggression. At home, I'm very similar, but also just curious if any of you guys are like different at home.
I mean, I think I get begged a lot to turn the teacher voice off at
Yeah.
home. My
Yeah.
kids have gone to school all day, but I go through that. I see that you're doing this. I would like you to do this because, and, in that booming voice. And, even my husband's like, yeah, please don't do that, right? So I think I tend to be
Yeah.
unapologetically exactly who I am in the classroom as an individual.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work.
Right. And then my husband is the same way. Like he'll say something like, quit talking to me like I'm a student. And my typical response is then quit acting like one. And that doesn't,
That's aggressive.
it doesn't go well, like for our relationship. But like honestly, or he'll be like, Lisa, you're talking down to me. Like sometimes I have to read the room better in situations, and I think even at work, I'm reflecting on this a lot of like, I'm not scared to walk into a room of 20 people and command a meeting, take the lead and problem solve for a student, advocate for a student, but that is also contingent on who is in the room. So if I go into a meeting and say it's Blair's student and Blair is his TOR and she's taking the lead, I have no reservations or qualms about like taking a more supportive role of like, I don't need to handle this meeting. I don't need to problem solve. He has somebody who is perfectly capable and is great at her job, so I'm just going to support her. I also kind of feel the same way, like Dr. Martinez, like you do a nice job of that. Like depending on who's in the room, you're like, who do you need me to be, right? Do you need me to take the lead, or do you need me to just support you? And I do think that could probably just all be related back to like the relationships that we build with our coworkers and our staff, and figuring out what they need from us in what situation. Before kind of opening it up to any like closing thoughts, my highlights for chapter 5 are what we focus our attention on, we'll get more of. So at the end of the day, pivoting our thoughts and using that neuroplasticity that I didn't spend much time talking about can make significant impacts on our perspectives and our happiness. And doing that, using clear, vigilant communication, focuses the attention on what we want, not what we don't want, but that takes conscious effort. And then assertiveness teaches others how to treat us. So what we will allow will continue. If I allow you to be disrespectful, you're going to think that's okay, and you're going to continue being disrespectful. So leaning into that and setting clear and firm boundaries make it safer and a more successful environment for everyone. So I shared so much from chapter 5. Does anybody have any thoughts or any points that like I didn't cover but you thought were still valuable or worth bringing up or worth connecting to? Go ahead. It's okay.
I kept thinking about this during the assertiveness chapter, and I say it quite frequently in my classroom, and I don't know why it just kept popping into my brain. I say a lot, I'm so happy you failed.
They're going to mess up.
Yeah, I love it when kids mess up. Not on this like grand stage or anything like that. And it's always so shocking, right, to hear that at the beginning. Well, I just failed. Like, this is awful, right? But I think the path to success and the path to in life, success and failure look eerily similar, right? So I guess it just kept coming over and over, and so then we model for them. Okay, so this is where you failed. So we can sit and we can dwell on the failure, but that usually puts us in a pretty emotional brain state, right? But then if we channel that to, it's like saying I'm sorry, right? So then when we channel I'm sorry, when we channel that you've made a mistake, what is our path to effective change, right? Sorry is a heavy word. Failure is a big deal, right? It's not fatal until you don't find a way out of it. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can help kids do. Find the path out of failure so that it's not fatal. You know, that just kept coming up over and over in my brain during this whole thing, like this whole chapter, I guess, is that we can really model to kids what failure looks like, because we're gonna fail. We're gonna we fail a lot, right?
Well, the beauty is the learning opportunity it provides, right? Success and immediate success does not necessarily lend itself to like a teachable moment, right? All you can be like, hey, you did a great job. Yeah, you did it. But when you fail, you're teaching them to like lean into the uncomfortability of learning.
Well, and she brought up quite frequently the lack of attention span in our kids. So, and we've talked about this before, like when we're building resilience in kids, which is really hard right now because we're part of that YouTube short generation, or we're raising a YouTube short. So it's scroll. So every few seconds, things are changing and changing and changing. And so I think what we notice most, especially this like post-COVID education, is that our kids don't have the stamina and the resilience that maybe a generation ago they did have. So how are we creating kids who can sit in the uncomfortable, who can learn through the uncomfortable? Because life is really uncomfortable a lot of times, right? And if we don't learn from it, it's failure. It's fatal.
Right. Sustained attention is such a huge issue. We meet weekly as an MTSS team, and I'm not going to dive into what that process is exactly, but we talk about students who are struggling. And one common theme with almost, I would be willing to venture 90% of the students that struggle academically or behaviorally that are brought to the table for this team to discuss, one of the very main concerns is attention. Always. We're like, is attention a concern? 100%. Absolutely. And so what is society, what is happening that this is such an issue? And I think it comes back to like that instant gratification, the change, the stimulation that's happening in their brain that like none of us really experienced.
Well, there's
right?
like this big dopamine release, right? When you're sitting in the uncomfortable, right?
Right.
So when we want that hit of dopamine, right?
Yep.
Boom, boom,
And
boom,
they
we
don't
want
know
that.
how to be bored.
Yep. I say that a lot too. I
Yeah.
am so pleased that you are bored right now. Creativity is born out of boredom.
100%. And like my parents would they'd ship me out the back door, and they wouldn't see me for 12 hours, right? And they're like, don't die. And then I'd come back at the end of the day and they'd be like, what'd you do? And I'm like, I rode my bike 6 miles away, right? And I'm like 10. I don't have a cell phone, but just like I was in charge of my own entertainment, like at a young age. But I was given a safe environment to do so too. So that's a huge credit to my parents. But does anybody have anything else they want to add?
Yeah, so Laura Watts, actually, who is a bus driver here and was my teacher in high school. So
Random fact,
love
she
that
was my
random
neighbor
fact.
growing up. Lived right around the corner
The
from me.
connection. We love you, Laura Watts.
Me too. Laura the other day was speaking with me about conscious discipline, and she said something really
Is she a
profound.
listener?
She might be. We'll see.
Hope so.
See if she notices
is now.
the shout out.
Yeah,
Yes,
she is
well,
now.
I'll tell her. She said, just because you can explain it doesn't mean you can excuse it. And I've really held tight to that just because we can explain why kids are doing what they're doing doesn't mean that it's okay. And I think just continually going back and being assertive with all of these things is really beneficial. So I was really thankful for that. So shout out to you, Laura. Appreciate you.
Yeah, right on. Okay, before we leave, we've got one more thing, one more fun thing to do. So we've got what we have dubbed the Wheel of Mischief. And I can see your super glue here. Is that hot glue or super glue?
It was hot glue.
Eric Rader broke the tip off of this. So, and so what you're going to do is you're going to spin it, and whatever. I'm avoiding eye contact with you right now.
Yeah, it should be noted that we usually don't try to be real near each other in a room when we need to be serious because 2 sevens, which if you don't know the Enneagram, these are the people that are looking to have fun most of the time, really shouldn't sit next to each other in a serious situation. So yeah, I'll bite my lip and not look at you either. Just tell what you need to say.
Yeah, I want you to spin the spinner. And then they're going to ask you a ridiculous question off of a card based on the number. And both of you are going to spin separately, so you'll have different questions. Now, I will say that I rewatched episode 4, and Zach Tyler was a huge disappointment. So, Zach, if you're listening, your answer was...
I didn't watch it. I feel the same.
Kind of cowered out, right?
He totally botched it, and I was expecting more, okay? So I'll hand
High
it to you.
expectations for you guys.
I'm kind of stuck.
Do you want me to hold it?
I lost something.
What was
but I
that?
believe I landed on a 3. I don't know.
nut.
It's okay. We'll get it back. Number 3 says, garden gnomes. What's your opinion on them?
Oh, okay. Now I'm going to make my friend Katie watch this. She grew up in Peru, and apparently Peru, Indiana, they love them some garden gnomes. So they're like frequently in the yard. I think it's like rather bizarre, yeah.
Little tiny
I
people
drove through
statues.
Peru once
Have you
with Mindy
seen-
Christie.
have
and
you seen the gnomes?
We noted that we would like to go back and look again at Peru. We were driving through on our way to a
It's the circus
destination.
capital of like the world.
Yeah, and we were kind of like, where are we?
Circus capital?
Circus capital.
I don't get into
Garden
circuses.
gnomes, no.
So you care
So
for
I'm a
so
big
much
fan.
so
That her friend owned
garden
a
gnomes or
restaurant
circus
called
No,
Happy
garden
Gnome.
gnomes. So at our old house, I built a garden
Could we go
gnome,
there?
like a gnome garden. And so we were purchasing all sorts of ones
So
off Amazon.
fanciful. Yeah.
And so at our new house, they were just staggered around the front porch.
Can I ask though, are the garden gnomes socially acceptable, or are they doing inappropriate like gestures and like have their like, are they like
Your
mooning?
neighbors hate that.
There's a
Because-
combination.
Because if I were to have them, they would be like whipping the bird.
The one we have, the funniest one we have, I think, is the one that's sitting on the toilet playing on their phone.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Is that in
So
the bathroom
we
or
try
is
to
that
keep
in
it
the
classy.
yard?
No, it's in the front yard, on the front steps.
So is there
Keep it classy.
I love it.
Yeah.
The neighbors love it.
is there a gnome restaurant in Peru though?
No, that gnome restaurant. I was just saying that so much so that one of her friends from Peru opened a restaurant in Fort Wayne called the Happy Gnome.
Do the waitresses dress like Gnomes?
No, not when I was
really
there.
Waiters,
In colored overalls?
Yeah, so there you go. No, I think that's very, very
Tall
bizarre.
hats.
Yeah, not
Gnomes
for you.
are- No. Yeah.
A good thing Katie's birthday just passed. Happy belated birthday to Katie, because if I would have known this before, I would have gotten her a gnome.
Yes, she would have. I guarantee it.
I would have. Okay, Blair, your
Do you
turn.
want me to
Be
let me to
careful. You
hold it
hold it,
while
I'll
you spin?
We're at number 1.
Cereal, is it really a soup? Explain.
What?
You know, we just had this question come up in an interview that we conducted together.
What?
Sometimes.
So, but you know what? I'm going to say that it meets the criteria for a soup if you are looking for, how you consume it and the materials you need, a bowl and a spoon. However, the temperature, I think, separates it from a soup.
That is
I'm
the-
gonna
Haven't you had a
say-
cold
I'm gonna say-
gazpacho?
I don't know. I'm also not a soup lover, but I am a cereal lover. So I'm going to separate
If there's
it.
marshmallows in the cereal, does that change anything?
No, I'm
They
not
could be
gonna
magically delicious,
I don't discriminate against cereal consumption.
And she doesn't judge them either.
Yeah, I won't judge
If
it.
I said I liked Raisin Bran, I bet you would judge me.
No, I wouldn't.
Oh, that's
no,
interesting.
that's
You
not
have a
bad.
happy gut. Good for you.
Shredded wheat.
Oh, I love shredded wheat.
You like
Judging
a,
you.
you like a solid
No, not
loaf.
the one brick.
The brick that's wrapped in a brown
minis.
paper.
I'll take the minis, but
Yeah, not
Ted
the
Lasso, when it's just
That's
one
what I
giant line in the bowl.
Ted Lasso just blunk one.
I would
veil
say
of
the
straw.
sweetness of cereal definitely puts it above soup for me.
Yeah, I think that and the temperature is the one that always
Yeah.
comes up when we've asked that question before.
Or, yeah, just no.
How did the person answer in the interview? Was it, they said
She's like,
nothing,
no.
nothing creative came from that?
No.
I don't remember.
She just said,
It's shocking.
no.
It's a
No,
shocking
just said no.
question.
Because I
no.
do want to say that some
Just
of some of Blair and I's favorite experiences together have come from like job interviews. Like you learn
time.
a lot about the people.
Yes.
There was no puppies involved.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but you did. With that, I think we should probably wrap up.
so we can't bring up your weird story. Go ahead.
I have no problem.
for next
Hold
time.
on. I have no problem telling the story. What if that person
Sure.
is listening? It's
true.
I do not want them
It was a very unique situation.
in a job interview for a position. A person brought in a basket of puppies. Okay, and if
would've
you're
made my day.
if you're asking whether Blair and I held them and like really
Yes, we
leaned
did.
into what was happening, the answer is yes. The other. The
I
other
like those dogs.
I would just say the other details didn't necessarily support the use of the puppies for that, and that the rest of it kind of got lost in translation.
Great distraction.
But there were puppies at a job interview.
And they were cute.
We were hopeful for the situation, but. I think that's that. That's not even the wildest.
No, I was going to say that's not the worst.
It's not
or
even-
the
I
wildest
think we got like a
interview
podcast
we
here.
sat
Just
through.
wild things are happening to me.
Yeah.
That's what it should be.
Because
Crazy things,
Well,
that's
to
what
be
we call
honest,
it.
if we were to come on air and share some of the things that happen day to day, like in a school or like a conversation with a student, or somebody did this or somebody did that, the chances of like our community and the people that are listening, they'd be like, "That's not real," and we'll be like, "No, that's real. That's real life." For example, I walked into Katie Strang's classroom 2 days ago, and it smelled like a porta-john, and that's real. That is real life. It was terrible, and no one was even in there. There wasn't
Lingers.
a student or an adult in there. It was.
Welcome to middle school.
It was just
And-
Katie?
She wasn't even in
not
there
even
either.
you.
So if we shared some of the experiences we had genuinely and like honestly, I mean, people wouldn't believe us.
Used to joke it could be a fundraiser to do like pay-per-view, live stream into the school. Because
yeah.
there is some banana type stuff that happens. It's crazy sometimes.
A kindergartner walking to recess yesterday or the day before looked at me. I don't know this child. I don't know who they are. They don't know me. And they were like, you look tired. And I was like,
They were noticing.
They noticed. They didn't
thank
judge.
you.
It
Thank
was
you.
daylight savings.
So yeah, I mean, there are funny things, but then there are also absolutely off the wall, wild things, and also really sad things that we deal with all the time. So thanks again to Blair and Katie. I want to
Thanks for having us.
I want to like quote an Instagram reel that we recently shared with each other. They're my my poopy pals, because nothing's off limits. Nothing is off limits. For coming today, and thankful for everybody that's listening and have tuned into our first 2 episodes. Hopefully you keep listening even after today. So until next time,
Stay mindful.
stay mischievous.
And stay connected. Bye, guys.